We are now experiencing some very interesting and difficult times where more than 50 million children should be furious. More than 100 million American families should be just irate because of what is happening at this time. This is a major problem. This is a huge concern, and we have seen the writing on the wall for several years. What's actually happening is going to make millions and millions of people very upset, but it doesn't look like there's anything that's going to be done about it. So I want to address what this is, how this is impacting so many people, and what you could expect moving forward. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So what is going on at this time that is potentially going to have 50 million people, 50 million children completely furious and have more than 100 million parents irate? Well, it has to do with funding, but for schools. This is a huge concern because what we have been experiencing lately is we're seeing less enrollment into schools, and less enrollment normally means less funding. For instance, I'll just give you Washington State, for example. In Washington State, our school districts, our schools actually get funding based on the amount of people that enroll in that school. Well, guess what? If less enrollments happen, that means less funding happens. As less funding happens, it means you get less books, pencils, teachers, right? Space. But here's a major problem. Look at this. This is from Virginia. Okay? Franklin County, Virginia considers closing 1 to 3 schools in face of a declining enrollment and state funding. This is in one county. One county in Franklin County is going to close between 1 and 3 schools. This is not 1 to 3 classrooms. No, this is schools. Okay? These are schools we're talking about. That's why this is such a big deal. But when we think about it, and let's go back and think about what has happened over the past few years. Well, we've seen a bunch of different things. A bunch of things have happened. So one of the things during the pandemic, many parents were staying home. And so they were not taking their kids to school. Instead, many parents decided and opted for homeschooling or some type of a mixture between online and in-person schooling. Okay, well, that took away some of the enrollments for those schools. The other thing, and again, this is still happening today, but another thing is many students went to private school. They decided, you know what, I'm not going to deal with public schools. I'm not going to deal with all the rules and the mask mandates and the shot requirements. No, I'm going to go to a private school. We're going to pay for that. And private school does not impact, or it does in a way because you're pulling the enrollment from them, but it doesn't impact them. It doesn't impact public schools. Okay, it does in a negative way, but not positive. Well, here's the other thing. In certain states like California, in certain states that really shut down and they clamped down on their residents, guess what? People up and left. They just left the state. So that obviously impacted enrollment in those schools. Again, this is turning into a new and major issue. Well, it doesn't stop there. Look at this. New York is updating its free school meal programs to make more than 60,000 families newly eligible. Why am I showing you this? Well, it's actually because of one thing. What we have seen is that schools are trying to not spend as much money on lunches, on breakfast, and things like that. So one of the things that they're trying to do is some are trying to only give lunch to people that truly need it. Here's the problem. According to the Biden administration, almost every single person is eligible for free lunch. Now, I'm not saying this is a problem because I'm not supportive of giving a child in need a lunch. Absolutely, let's do that. The issue is now some of that funding that's going there is not going to the actual school. It's going to the food and the nutrition, which again is great. But in the meantime, what about the additional funding that's needed to just run the school? Where is that coming from? Well, for many states, they are looking to update this program, and it's going to provide more students with free lunches. Okay? Because if you remember years ago, it was free or reduced lunch, depending on if you qualified for it, depending on your family's income. Well, now everything is just free lunch. And so again, it's turning into a little bit of a problem. But here's what we're seeing. Schools are seeing their budgets get reduced for many different reasons. One of which, staff is mostly has gotten a raise. It's been small, but they mostly gotten a raise. School items are costing more money, and that's something we knew. Utilities cost more money. Obviously, that's something that you got to pay for. And then computers, paper, pencils, books. And these are not just books in English. These are also books in Spanish. These are books in other languages. You know why? Because we also have a migrant crisis. A massive, massive crisis. Just look at this right here. This is from Denverite. It says support can't come soon enough for DPS. This is the Denver Public Schools classrooms crowded with new migrant students. A new fund may help. It says Denver Public Schools has already allocated more than $1.6 million to help support the late arrivals. Now, again, should we be supported? Should certain states be funding their public schools? Well, if they don't, the federal government isn't going to do it. So they have to. So we have to take money from our budget, our state budgets, and put it into public schools. Guess what happens there? Now the state has to go and rework the budget. So that new fire truck that you were probably hoping to get, well, sorry, that's not coming. The new library, well, that's already been built, so you got to pay for it. But what about all the books? I was talking to somebody just the other day, went to a new library, and they said their library was beautiful. This thing was spectacular, multiple floors, a lot of books. Then they went to the back, and the library was expected to get, I think it was another like 50,000 books or 40,000, something like that, some ridiculous number. They couldn't pay for those books. They couldn't get those books. Those books weren't coming because they didn't have the budget for those books. This is a public library. Interesting. But that's kind of where we're at. Now, here's the other thing. You know how I talked about books and books in different languages? Well, guess what? It's not just books. Look at this. It says, as migrants arrive, some schools need more buses, books, and bilingual teachers. All children are entitled to a free public education in the U.S. regardless of their immigration status. That is absolutely true. Every single child that comes into the United States can get free education through a public school. Here's the problem. Again, I try to be very open with this and transparent with this. I'm not against people coming into the United States and looking for a better life. The problem is we have to provide the funding for them. So how do we do that? Well, this is the issue right here, is we have to get more buses to take those children to school. We have to get more books and books in multiple languages. And then we have to pay more bilingual teachers. Well, guess what? There's not just a million of bilingual teachers out there, especially that want a job that is going to underpay you. So again, it comes back to the funding. Is there enough funding to pay for a new teacher, to pay for a new bus, to buy new books? And here's the problem. There's not. And so here's the other issue. Republicans and Democrats at this time are fighting over this border crisis, fighting over a border security deal. This deal could also potentially be tied to $60 billion going to Ukraine. But here's what many governors, state governors, have been saying. The United States needs more funding. We cannot send $60 billion over to Ukraine when states and cities are currently in crisis mode because they now have to pay for illegal immigrants that have come into the United States that they did not account for this past year. So, at this time, it's turning into a massive issue and a major crisis. But it's happening right now. So, just wanted to fill you in on what's going on at this time. Again, it's a major issue. The problem is it does not look like it's going to get fixed anytime soon. So chances are you're going to see school teachers lose their jobs because of funding. Schools could close down. We could see people completely lose the access to the library, new computers, everything. You may go back to the old days where people were doing their homework on a pen or with a pen using paper, as opposed to now where everyone's given a Chromebook or an iPad. Again, it comes back to funding. So we're going to see what happens moving forward, but this is why hundreds of millions of people are furious at this time, because they see what is happening and they understand there's going to be changes coming very soon. So that's what we know at this time. As always, as I know more, I promise, I'll come back on and share all the latest news and updates. But that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.